My name is Samuel Mercado, and this is Activity 2, Laws and Policies. The law I will be describing and talking about is the law of corporal punishment, where the use of physical contact and punishment is used as consequences for misbehaving children and the lack of discipline in the classroom. The law itself involves spanking, paddling, and limits the types of physical force that can be considered discipline. Some states allow and some states prohibit, depending on where you live in the United States. You have different abilities and restrictions as a teacher. In the state of Oregon, where I live, it is prohibited, but it does allow physical restraint, meaning you can physically restrain a student if you think they're going to be harmful to themselves or to other students. But it is completely banned and not allowed in the state of Oregon, as to where it says it is not allowed, and all resolution ordinances are void and unenforceable as ruled by the state. So no matter what the circumstance is, it is not allowed, and it's prohibited to physically use corporal punishment with students. Detaining or restraining them is one thing, and it's different than corporal punishment. So what is allowed is being sent home early, after school conferences with teachers and parents, references to outside counselors and resources, in-school suspensions, after-school detentions, but suspensions away from home or out of school are being frowned upon as they are counterproductive. There's many reasons why there's a shift in education away from corporal punishment, and the reason for that is that there's a shift to coherence and to instill willingness into the students and to have them be self-motivated. The goal is to create positive environments and resources that, like corporal punishment, that prohibit that and create a safe and willing environment, but also inflict fear with corporal punishment, are counterproductive and have been proven to do so and be so throughout the decades. So a little bit of the history about corporal punishment is that corporal punishment has been around since the beginning of education. Teachers used to be considered not only to teach reading and arithmetic and writing, but they were also to build good character and good citizens. And along the way, corporal punishment was used extensively. They were given the power to do so by being the acting parent in a classroom and a substitute as a parent while the parents were absent in the educational setting. So they were given the authority to act as parents, including corporal punishment, which was spanking, paddling, and different forms of physical punishment. Some of the different timelines demonstrated that around World War II, teachers unionized and were able to get contracts to completely structure what they were being held accountable for and what their expectations were. And when that happened, when teachers unionized, a lot of the disciplinary issues or responsibilities were given to administrators, social workers, and other resources on campus. So around the 1950s, rock and roll was happening in the United States, comic books, and there was a big worry in society that students and the youth were being led in the wrong direction. So corporal punishment was again reenacted. And then in the 80s and 90s in the United States, drugs were an epidemic and rampant as today, and gang violence was at an all-time high. So the current government put in a zero tolerance, zero policies, and very strict and aggressive consequences for very minor infractions. So they went back to the outdated corporal punishment approach of very little tolerance. And what has shown over the decades now is that it was not beneficial. It did not help. It did not improve anything at all. It actually created a gap between the racial particular word. It created a gap between the racial economic environments. Depending where you went to school, depending how much violence was in your community, these policies were harder on you and made it actually more difficult to get in the classroom and create a safe and willing environment. So the way that these laws affect the teaching environment is that we must find a way that is not physically fear-based. It is not going to create physical punishment, but actually provide an open, willing, safe environment where we can focus on teachable moments. We can focus on rebuilding relationships and extending our relationships and incorporating parents into the equation along with administrators or counselors. Finding alternatives to grow the students' willingness to monitor themselves and not to be monitored through consequences. So corporal punishment is still legal in 19 states here in the United States, and is still obviously something that I'm sure is very rare, but isn't necessarily illegal, which then opens it for the possibility for becoming actively used again and being counterproductive to the goal of education and our goals here at Teach Now. So thank you, and yeah, interesting to hear what everyone else has to share. Thank you.